Stephanie, the global market is working on making a comeback from the pandemic. One country to watch is Spain. The Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez, is here in the U.S. advocating for global cooperation in meetings with business leaders such as Apple's Tim Cook. And Prime Minister Sanchez is our guest. Thank you for making Morning Joe one of your first stops on your American tour. And I note that you're going to New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Cupertino. Mentioned a little bit of why, but if you could explain more about the purpose of your visit here to the U.S. and why not Washington?
Well, thank you very much. I believe that in the aftermath of the pandemic, in Spain, we are now defining our roadmap for the modernization of our economy. And for that, we need and we would like to have the U.S. private sector on board. And that is why we're here. We are going to meet very important investment funds. Also, we're flying to L.A., to San Francisco. I think that we are in Europe and in Spain especially, we're living a momentum after the pandemic. We have European funds, public investments, to make greener our economy, to digitalize our economy, to modernize our educational system. And therefore, we're looking forward to engage private investments in Spain.
So it's hard not to talk about the economy, whether it be the world economy or Spain's economy, without talking about the pandemic. Where does Spain stand in terms of coronavirus?
Well, we have high figures today, unfortunately, and that is why we are calling for, prudence, to be prudent in Spain. But fortunately, we are not having any kind of rejection movement against the vaccination. 50% of our population is fully vaccinated. We're looking forward to reach 70% of our population before the end of summer vaccinated. So, vaccination means, of course, economic rebound. This is what we are witnessing nowadays in Spain. But what we don't want is to get to the previous stage of the pandemic. We understood that digitalization, that ecological transitions are the major revolutions that we have to face. And we wanted to do it in a very inclusive way, social, territorial, and also on gender equality, because unfortunately women are very touched and harmed because of this pandemic.
Yes, and I want to ask you a little bit about the numbers that you say are still high. You say there is no rejection movement to vaccines. Explain what you mean by that. And then what is the problem? Is it getting vaccines to the people? Still, is it actually a physical problem?
No, it is not. What we did in our vaccination campaign is to focus on those generations that are more vulnerable, so to say, to the COVID-19. So now the contagious is mainly among the youth, those generations that unfortunately didn't have the chance to get the vaccine. But fortunately, we are now opening that vaccination campaign to our youth, and they're responding quite positively. So we are confident that we are going to reach that goal, 70%, to get this group immunity that our scientific team are looking forward. And so we are very confident. And the debate that we are facing, not only in Europe, but also in the US and elsewhere, is we are facing a kind of ideological battle, partisan battles, when what we are facing is a global public health challenge. So the major mistake that us politicians could do is to ideologize this pandemic fight that we're facing. So, this is not a question of progressives, of conservatives. This is a public health matter, a public health question, and it's very important to tell our people, our citizens, that we need to be prudent, that we need to be safe, and that we have to get the vaccine, because the vaccine is safe and it protects us against the virus.
Mr. Prime Minister, thanks for being here. President Biden has been in office now for 6 months. He made his first trip to Europe a few weeks ago, and his message was, America is back. I want to get your assessment of that. How do you compare and contrast this administration to his predecessor, and in particular on the issue of climate change? Is Spain doing enough? Is the United States doing enough?
Well, I think that when President Biden says America is back. I think it's good news, not only for Europe, but also for the world, because on the climate challenge that we're facing, it is important to have the U.S. on board. So, going back to the Paris Agreement, I think it's a great news for all. In Europe, we are very committed with this ecological transition. In Spain, we are devoting 40% of the European funds, which means for my country, $162 billion for the next 6 years. We're devoting 40% to ecological transition and 28% to digitalization, which means in the end the same, because digitalization and ecological transitions are completely linked. So I think it's great news. I think that it's very important after this pandemic that the transatlantic relations between the U.S. and the European Union, be more close or in the future. And unfortunately, the situation that we had before with the previous administration, the U.S. administration, the Trump administration, was, I would say, very difficult to understand. To see a president of the U.S. saying that the European Union is a kind of an enemy against the U.S. interests, I think it was a complete mistake.
Now, when President Biden was in Europe at the G7, he was warmly received. But there were a few areas of friction, in particular on relations with China, where President Biden has sort of defined the rivalry with China as sort of the defining economic one of this century, suggesting that the democracies of the world need to prove that they can still do good, big things to compete with China. Where does your country stand with its relationship with China? Do you think President Biden has a point, or is this a partner you're willing to deal with?
I think he has a point. I think that China for us, as Europeans, means a negotiator, a competitor, and also a rival, a systemic rival, for instance, on democratic values. But it is also true that we need to speak with them. We need to open a dialogue with them on major challenges, global challenges that we have, for instance, on ecological transition. But of course, if we understood something after the pandemic, is one of the lessons is the importance of digitalization, the importance of cybersecurity. And that is why in Spain we are looking forward to be like a kind of global leader on cybersecurity. We are devoting more or less over $600 million, apart from $4 billion on digitalization, and I think it's very important to strengthen our cybersecurity system in Spain and Europe, and of course elsewhere.
Mr. Prime Minister, before you go, just looking at some numbers that have been presented to me about women in leadership in Spain. Spain has the highest share of women in any government in the world, 63.6%. All 3 VPs are women. Does this translate to other aspects of Spanish life, business, education?
Absolutely, absolutely. We're very proud. We passed a law on equal payment between men and women. Also, we are very committed against gender violence. We also increased the minimum wage by over 30% in last years, and this was very important for women. And also what we did was to increase maternity and paternity leave for both parents over 16 weeks. So we're very committed with gender equality. We don't understand these political movements that try to identify the gender equality challenge and a commitment to a kind of ideological question. This is not an ideological question. This is a fundamental question. This is a human rights question, and that is why I'm really proud that my country is very committed with gender equality.
You said you passed equal pay laws. How does it work? How are they enforced?
It is getting better. Unfortunately, women are, receiving less salaries than lower salaries than men, but still we have that public commitment, and we're speaking with the companies. We are also speaking with the major companies in order to, first to have this equal retribution, and of course to have more presence of women on the on the boards, so to say.
All right, Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez, thank you very much for being on the show this morning. We appreciate it.